4.5 decades that have elapsed since the Berkshire Music Center was created. It has had ups and downs, but it always had an excitement that no other summer school has. And this is sometimes attributed by some people to the beauty of the atmosphere, the great old trees, the estate, the informality of open air. I don't think any of those explains the success of Tanglewood.
If you had a completely free hand, and if you were setting out to establish a place to make music for 8 weeks, every summer, then it's impossible to imagine anywhere more beautiful than here in Tanglewood, the home of the Berkshire Music Center. Here in the countryside of the Berkshires, in this corner of Massachusetts, we're just a couple of hours or so north of New York and west of Boston. Tanglewood is the summer home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, but it's also a mecca for young musicians in their 20s who come here to work with older and more experienced composers, conductors, and instrumentalists. I do promise you it's a daunting daily schedule of rehearsals, concerts, and masterclasses. It would be impossible in a less relaxed atmosphere.
If you've read The Wonder Book for Boys and Girls by Nathaniel Hawthorne, written around 1854, I think, he describes the spot where I'm sitting right now in a way that he would find still familiar today. He describes the view over the lake, the trees, the setting of this house on the grounds, and conjures up for the reader certain of the magic that's still here today in terms of the physical setting. What we try to do is to take away from the students all thought of the commercial world, all thought of the necessities of daily life. We practically feed them and clothe them and wash them here so that they are freed entirely to concentrate on their craft and their art, both, we hope.
They don't come to Tanglewood as a kind of music camp. They don't come to Tanglewood to learn to play an instrument, for example, or learn to play an instrument particularly better. They come to Tanglewood to learn about music, to learn with the technical prowess that they have, which is assumed before they get here. They come to Tanglewood to make music.
It's not involved, as academic institutions tend to be, with the everyday learning of one's instrument or of one's craft, but in the more advanced and refined sense, learning matters of musicianship, of stylistic awareness, for example, refinements and nuances of artistry rather than merely the technical aspects of performing. And this applies in all the areas that we deal with in Tanglewood: the instrumentalists, the singers, the pianists, and the composers. And the conductors. I almost forgot the conductors.
Yes, you tried, and sometimes much better. But the danger is if you want to go before the beat, then orchestra sees this as a slow down.
I see.
You know, like da da di da da da, clarinet oboe. Da da di da, ah di da. See? And I use that when I need orchestra slow down, of course. You know, up and But here too, you're doing this. Beginning, molto piace. Yeah, you can do it, not too much problem. I don't do it because I know that will later become problem because I know violin coming.
Yeah.
I know this coming. So, and if like Cesar Frank and Sibelius Symphony, I do this same your technique because I don't have any danger for next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? But this one is danger, so I don't do that. So I do already before the beat.
You might think it a little odd to work not with an orchestra but with two pianos. But you have to remember that orchestral musicians can often play well despite the conductor. Whereas these two remarkable pianists are specifically trained to emphasize every little mistake the conductor makes, and instantly.
Yes. No more lesson. I just show you last second, yeah? Okay. So you feel it. If you feel it, you try to do it. Like so. Do you feel it? Yes. Not. This is not. Bravo. Now, that means they can play without all this beat. So only thing you need is just give cue. Ta 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 ta. No, how you go? They don't need it. Would you try once from the pure? What was it? Same place, 6 after whatever.
Each year, just 2 or 3 of the more experienced students are accepted as conducting fellows, and they get to work with the student orchestra itself.
Excuse me, for conductor to get this feeling is like go through the Himalaya mountain, you know? Very big mountain. He's in about the middle. Yeah. For me, it took many, many years. But would you listen carefully and don't disturb this syncopation? I'm going to conduct now, so you watch me. And if you try once now, I think they can. I just tried. What kind of reaction I get? So now you try easy as possible. The most important, listen. 3 spots to listen. Not too bad. Try. Listen to me. Listen here and listen. This is one of the most difficult for any orchestra. This is very difficult. And any orchestra who does the performance, not 100%. We know it. So tonight is very interesting, but I want you to I want you to feel a little bit more sense. When I didn't conduct at all, you listen so carefully. When you see this thing, then you go with it. Sometimes, I don't know. And for you, don't show too much sense, because they can listen. Huh? Beginning of molto vivace, please. Beginning molto vivace. Not too much beat. Listen. That's it. Yes, that's it. Are you comfortable now? Yes? No, now first time I feel that you played by your own. You listen and he just helped 1.5 inch conducting, not big one. So he will not do it. So you would you want to try one more time? Just before tonight? Terrible. I have a terrible habit. I want to listen orchestra, and my ears here, and I do this. And it's very natural. You know, if you want to hear something, you know, what? Right? Or what? And then conductor goes like this, and he took from me, I guess, or he from same country, maybe all Japanese, he goes this. Don't go this. If you go this, everybody. You know? So it's nothing should not be worried. Isn't it? This piece should not worry. Mysterious happen. Now, it's not worry or not this type of music. Up here. Try it. It's difficult.
It's not possible to teach conducting. One thing different from pianist or violinist, we don't have orchestra home, so you have to have a chance to conduct orchestra. But nevertheless, it's a fantastic opportunity to have a young orchestra facing young conductor. And if conductor knows score very well, then the orchestra produce music right away. That's amazing. I spent here my summer, 1960. That was the biggest shock in my life. I met my colleague, the man who sleep top of me, the two beds, is so much studying Mahler, so much he's studying Bruckner, so much he's studying Mahler's vocal things, symphonical things. And here I am, I study all the music, but I never really get into Mahler yet. You know, I was too busy, Stravinsky, Beethoven, Brahms, Mendelssohn, also Schubert, but I really didn't get, I was young too, but I see same age of mine is absolutely love in Mahler. You know, that kind of thing. And one guy is absolutely crazy about the operas. He goes like this. And to me, that stimulation, crash, was marvelous. And I see all the rehearsal of Charles Munch conducting and Pierre Monteux conducting Boston Symphony. And so you see the level, standard right there. So like my head was bang from my friend, same room, dormitory, and from Boston Symphony performance and rehearsals. And then yet I have to study music for tomorrow morning rehearsal with the student orchestra. It was fantastic.
We will return to Tanglewood in a moment. We now return to Tanglewood.
Seiji Ozawa is just one of a great number of international figures whose careers started here at Tanglewood. But music in the Berkshires had already been established in the 1930s by Gertrude Robinson Smith, a New Yorker and the wealthy daughter of a Wall Street lawyer. She must have been a born organizer, a dynamo, a steamroller. Along with a lady called Miriam Oliver, she liked to spend her summers here in the Berkshires. They decided they wanted their own vacation cabin. Typically, Gertrude being that sort of person, they built it with their own hands. Gertrude loved this part of New England, saying, "It's high time America had its own Salzburg." So, just down the road, they persuaded Dan Hanna, a local farmer, to lend them his horse ring. And there they set up a weekend of outdoor concerts with the musicians from the New York Philharmonic. Gertrude's intention had been to bring music to the farmers. Now, as it turned out, the farmers didn't go, but society people did. Within a couple of years, those weekend concerts were showing a modest profit. But in 1936, the New York musicians were unavailable, so Gertrude engaged the Boston Orchestra with their famous conductor, Sergei Koussevitzky. Koussevitzky insisted the concert should be given undercover. What a sensible fellow. So they fixed him up with a tent. But then on one famous occasion, there was one of those typical cloudbursts that this place is famous for, which completely washed out a concert. Gertrude, though, saw this as a godsend. She jumped up on the stage and declared to the audience above the noise of the downpour, "This storm has proved conclusively the need for a proper concert hall." And a kind of soggy cheer went up. And within minutes, the audience had pledged $30,000 towards a target of $100,000, which was just as well since Koussevitzky had already engaged Eliel Saarinen, the eminent Finnish architect, to design a music pavilion. But Saarinen's scheme, which included practice rooms, a library, and so forth, would have cost around $250,000. And as it was progressively whittled down, Saarinen washed his hands of the whole idea. For $100,000, he said, you'll never get a concert hall, just a shed. And that's precisely what it's been called ever since, the shed. It was built in the end not by Saarinen, but by a local engineer, Joseph Franz, 1 month ahead of schedule and comfortably within budget. His widow, who still lives here, told me how he decided on the best location for it.
My husband was not a musician. He liked music, but he wasn't a musician. All he knew was that you didn't want an echo. So he walked around on the lawn there and clapped his hands, and when he didn't get an echo, he put the stake down, and that became the apex.
The shed was officially inaugurated on August 5th, 1938, with Koussevitzky conducting Beethoven. He and his orchestra, at last, had not only a permanent summer home, but a place where Koussevitzky could realize something that he'd dreamed of constantly ever since his early days in Russia, a school for young musicians.
He could be ruthless about his school because he loved it so much. This has persisted, and a lot of people who are still connected with the school did know him and did know this level on which he operated the school. And thank God for that, because that is what makes Tanglewood to this day such an extraordinary place. When Koussevitzky invented this great idea of the Berkshire Music Center, which should be a summer residence in which the members of the Boston Symphony would serve as faculty, and all carefully chosen young students would come and form a student orchestra. There would be chamber music, an opera department, solo singing department.
Right there.
Stay ahead of your cheekbones. Now the ah has to lead inevitably to the word répond. That's what it's saying. Ah, répond. So I mustn't have any bump in between, okay? Just right on the ah. Oh, but smile, ah is very good. There has to be a lot more heat in tendresse. Yes. Now, that heat can't be there if the tendresse is a little stuck here. Tendresse. Tendresse. No matter how passionate or sexy you feel about that, you can't do it if the word's trapped. Right. Okay, again. It's time for our little 15-minute break. 2 minutes from the break to talk to these people?
To talk to these people.
Certainly. Okay.
I just want to spend a moment telling you about fellowships. You know that you are fellows and that you're part of the fellowship program here. And to most of you, that simply means that you have received an invitation to spend 8 weeks in this magical place. None of you is paying tuition to be here. Most of you are also in a situation that sees your room and board paid for by other people. Where does it come from? Well, you know that your sponsor is the Boston Symphony, but behind the Boston Symphony and in partnership with it is an extraordinary group of individuals who reach into their pocket every year to give us the help that we need to invite you here. These people who donate fellowships actually reach into their pockets from year to year to give what they can, anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 or more, to support individual students here. And we try to arrange an occasion where the students who are on fellowships get to meet the donors of those fellowships. And usually turns out to be a marvelously enjoyable day.
This is just something that we in the Berkshires revere. We revere the fact that young people from all over the world come to learn how to be the world's class musician. It's a marvelous place. It's just a marvelous place. We're proud to be a part of the Berkshire Music Center and Tanglewood. Everyone who lives here is proud of the fact that they are close by.
Take them both. It's all right. Yeah, either way.
Are you coming up for dinner next Saturday night?
Yes, we are. We expect to come up for dinner next Saturday night.
And we'll have 3 guests.
And we'll have 3 guests.
And we expect to be up every Saturday night.
Right. Exactly.
So you're here for the summer now?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good. It's good to have
We
you
can't,
back.
we can't picture a more beautiful place to be, really.
It's great candy, though.
Delightful, great.
We like it.
I really can't stress enough the importance of Tanglewood to the community. It's everything. In the summertime, it's everything. Without Tanglewood, probably nothing would happen in the Berkshires. Because first comes Tanglewood, and all the musicians, and the trees, and the sunshine, and everything that makes it wonderful. And then, of course, all the businesses. They follow along, too. The only thing that was here before that, of course, was our venerable Red Lion Inn. Tanglewood is a very special place, but it's the most special of all to people who live here in the Berkshires.
We will return to Tanglewood in a moment. We now return to Tanglewood.
Saranac, Koussevitzky's former home, overlooking the estate, is where the student composers are housed. And of course, it was Koussevitsky, more than anybody else, who championed a great number of young American composers, such as Aaron Copland, for example.
Aaron Copland was, from the first year on, the head of the composition department. His invited guest that first year of 1940 was Paul Hindemith, no one less than Hindemith. And we always had people of that stature.
Koussevitzky had a passion about passing on to the young what the older, more learned musicians could tell them.
Don't you think the melodic material is a little ordinary there? Perhaps you could improve it over here.
He was interested in helping younger composers and younger musicians in general. He was a good guy. A little, sometimes a little crazy in the head, but I mean, basically a good guy.
Tanglewood is really to do with that most elusive of qualities, musicianship. And that's where experience comes in. And there's no greater test of musicianship than playing chamber music, most especially when coached by somebody with the understanding of Joe Silverstein.
Come through now. It's okay, it's my fault. No.
fa, fa, sol, sol. When you're walking easily in 3. All right, now look. You have to just keep walking along. Yum, bum, 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 bum. And you've got to build these phrases and actually not be afraid to play slightly free. You must stay super rhythmic, but you have to bend it a little bit. Otherwise, there's no line. Okay, start that.
They are already quite accomplished young musicians who are about to break into professional orchestral playing and who here receive not only their sort of final polishing, well, it's never final, of course, it goes on for a lifetime, but also perhaps an awareness of where they fit into the scheme of things. How advanced are they? What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? And there's no better way to find that out than to be suddenly thrown in with the best of your peers.
Putting together the Berkshire Music Center every winter is a remarkable experience for all of us. Beginning in November and December, we will hear from something like 8,000 to 10,000 young musicians who want to know more about Tanglewood. From among those, about 1,500 will actually apply and audition. We are in New York, Chicago, Cleveland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, sometimes in Texas, of course, many days in Boston, with the purpose of hearing as many of these musicians in live 10-minute auditions as we possibly can. The final decisions then are made back in Boston in consultation with the principal players of the Boston Symphony. And what we weed down to is a group of about 104 instrumentalists who comprise the fellowship program's orchestra, and then an additional 12 singers, 12 composers, this year 2 conductors, and about another 12 pianists to round out the program. Most of these people are just at the end of their conservatory training, average age 22, 23, 24, but it will be some years before they are working with a roster of conductors such as we can present them with every summer at Tanglewood.
Right, it's very good. Now, let's go back to the beginning. What gets very crucial in this piece is the rhythm. And not just your own, but understanding what everybody else does, because everything is cross-rhythmed and put together in very unusual ways. So if we were, for instance, just to have just the strings at the beginning, you'll see what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now, fine. In order for it to work, in order for it to really work, the seconds are going to have to play a little louder. Because of where you're positioned, your sound is a little weaker. And so for it to sound ba 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 ba, you have to be a little more. Okay, once more. 1, 2. Okay, now, the accent that you play isn't just an isolated accent. It's as if there was a little lead to the phrase. Bum, bum, ba, ba, bum, ba, 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 ba. It's a light, delicate accent, even though we're playing loud. It shouldn't just shoot out at us, okay? Everybody at the beginning, and then we go on. 1, 2. Okay, and before we go on, let me point out to you, I use a rule that no matter what building you're playing in, you adjust your balances right away. So even though this is a tricky place, being a loud one, we have to adjust. At number 1, it is the oboe that has the solo. This is simply an accompaniment. Bum, ba, 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 ba. If you can't hear the oboe really clearly and distinctly, you're too loud. 3 before 1. 1, 2. Now listen. Now listen, English horn has it. Too much, too much. First of all, English horn's a darker colored instrument, has a little bit less bright sound, so we have to play a little bit underneath that. Same thing, 3 before 1. 1, 2. Just light. Right, okay, good. That's perfect in the harp. Now I will need a little bit more from the upper line of the cello. You have the tune with the harp. You need to come out and balance with that. Everybody else is fine there. It's very good. 3. Right on 3. 1. That's it. Crescendo. Start less. Crescendo. Crescendo. Good. Okay.
We will return to Tanglewood in a moment. We now return to Tanglewood.
You use the stick, really, and you'll hear this from every conducting teacher, and you'll say, oh, I don't want to hear that again, and it's hogwash, that the stick is only an extension of the arm. But it's absolutely true. There's no reason for a stick to do this when the arm can't, or whatever. This is silly, that kind of stuff. The stick simply reflects what the arm does, in some cases what the wrist does, okay? Now, when should we use it and when shouldn't we? That's a purely personal matter. With me, it was forced on me for a while not to use the stick. I got very carried away once, in America and Paris once, outdoors, and I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and when I gave 3, my hand went over here, but the stick was somewhere in here, in the finger. Stuck. It was not, it was like this, you know, uh-oh. Like this, and the rest of it was through the whole, I swear that's true. That's exactly what happened. So, for a year and a half, I became totally paranoid as opposed to my normally partially paranoid state. And I conducted for a whole year without stick whatsoever. And to my surprise, I found myself liking it. Even in complicated technical works, you'd be amazed how much easier a Sacre de Printemps is without the stick. It's really comfortable. I was just shocked and amazed. Eventually, I knew I'd go back to using it just to see how comfortable I felt and to get over the fear of it. So I did. This is also true. You won't believe it, but it's true. So I get back, Firebird. No, not what you think. I'm real careful. I'm making sure the left hand is far enough away. All the cues are like this. And what happens, I get to about the middle of the thing, I turn the page, I got a paper cut from the score.
Well, what advice do you give to a young conductor? To be blunt, have you considered taking up an easier job? You know, quite seriously, that is point 1. You'd be surprised, you know, at the number of students who get mesmerized by what you might call the cosmetics of conducting, the elements of showmanship. But I'd have to be convinced that any young hopeful was really determined that his first and last loyalty was to the composer, that every decision and every gesture was there to serve not his own glorification, but to serve the music itself.
I would have to see the way he has absorbed the music and is giving it to the orchestra. I would have to form a surmise as to whether he had a real vision in his head, an oral vision of what this music must sound like that he has gained from studying the score. Then I would look for what talents he has to convey this knowledge, assuming he has already a vision on this knowledge, to convey it to the 80 or 90 or 100 people in front of him.
No shortage by Beethoven. Ba, 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 dee, ba, dee, da, dee, da, dee, da, dee. Otherwise, you have always marcato, always tension, always marching and cut off and so. Not at this place. Ra, dee, ra, dee, ra, dee. And also this. Show it like this. Yes?
May I have tea?
In former times, if a conductor came to the podium, he was like a king and he could rule. In our times, there's democracy in the orchestras, so the young conductors must be friends, must be a kind of fellows of the orchestras, helping them to play better than they would play without him. Is not to say, oh my God, I'm safe. No, my God, maybe I'm safe. So that's still excited. Not a this is theatralic. That's sentimental and not true. Make it clear. Beethoven makes it clear. Absolutely in tempo. Expressivo. Not aggressive. Not aggressive at all. First trumpet, please. That's the most important point, to know on which places the orchestra needs you and which places the orchestra needs only your inspiration. Every arm of a young conductor is different. Every body is different. The language of the body, of the arms, of the hands is different.
There is no other place that I'm aware of where musicians can be put under the pressure of performance from day to day in such an ideal atmosphere, and at the same time maintain a very close camaraderie with professionals whom they have known by reputation all their lives, if not in person, for the purpose of this establishing a master-apprentice relationship, which is really the way matters of style are transmitted from generation to generation in art.
Perfect. Timpani count careful, huh? Next one. But I don't become nervous if you're not together, because we know each other now. How many days we're together? It's almost like a long trip we did together. So, I don't worry the details. I think we should make Brahms tonight. And your Brahms, my Brahms, your Brahms, be together. I think we get something tonight. Thank you very much.
One of the things that gives Tanglewood its strength is the line of continuity that stretches right back to Koussevitzky. Remember, Seiji Ozawa was a pupil of Leonard Bernstein. who in turn was a pupil of Koussevitzky. Now that is one factor that differentiates Tanglewood from other places. Another factor, of course, is the dedicated involvement of experienced musicians working alongside youngsters. And ultimately, the quality of the place is determined by the quality of the students it attracts.
It's not the lawn, it's not the great old pines. It's not the fact of the blue sky and the sudden thunderstorms and the mountains. All that is wonderful. Wonderful faculty. Everything is wonderful. But it's the spirit of Sergei Alexandrovich Koussevitzky that makes that place magic.